Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Live Free, Ride Free. I'm your host, Rupert Isaacson, New York Times bestselling author of The Horse Boy and The Long Ride Home. Before I jump in with today's guest, I want to say a huge thank you to you, our audience, for helping to make this happen. I have a request. If you like what we do here, please give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, tell a friend. It really, really helps us to make the progress. To find out about our certification courses, online video libraries, books, and other courses, please go to rupertisaacson.com. So now let's jump in. Welcome back to the show. I've got Karen Rohlf here. A lot of you will already know who she is. Her work precedes her, and her program, Dressage Naturally, has been one of the, I'd say, linchpin approaches to trying to bring something a bit more humane back to dressage, which unfortunately over the last few decades seems to have become stressage for horses and humans a bit. But more than that, she's got a lot more to her. And her life and her work and her philosophy is something which I've been, wanting a chance to explore for a while. So I'm quite excited that she's one of the people who has really trod a path of sort of horses and self-actualization and bringing together certain aspects of nature and the mind through the equine field. So, Karen, thank you for coming on. Can you tell us, a bit about your work, who you are, and sort of how you got here? Or why did you get here?
That's a lot. Well, first of all, Rupert, thank you so much for asking me to join you on this podcast. It's fun to be able to sit and speak with you and hang out with you for a little while. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate being here. But let's see where to start. I mean, I st I started, and this is really important to mention because it's pervasive through me. It's just a little kid, in love with horses. I was just one of those crazy horse girls. I want a horse. I want a horse. I want a horse. And lucky enough that my mom had a horse for a little while when I was 7 and was all very low key. This was like property at the end of our street. She did some fox hunting for a little while. I was not a showgirl, it was not
Where
like
was this? Where did you grow up?
this was on Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Smithtown Hunt?
Smithtown Hunt,
Yeah.
near where Harry DeLea his place was near us, and yeah, in the historic town of Setauket, New York, part of the Revolutionary War. So
Okay.
there's some history. But yeah, I was not into showing. That was never my goal. I just loved horses and want to hang out with horses, and got a horse when I was a kid and did pony club and all that, and mostly spent a lot of time alone with my horse in the bushes doing stupid things. But luckily I survived. So the dressage training came through pony club. We had to do dressage in order to do the fun stuff of jumping. But the first horse I had took off with me once during a junior hunt, and we passed all the hunts people and the red coats, and we galloped right through the hounds, which is really not okay.
Yes,
And
it's like taking your clothes off in St. Peter's. Yeah.
oh my God, yeah. So the huntsman galloped after me, grabbed my horse, led me up to my mom, and said, "Take this kid for dressage lessons so she can learn how to control her horse."
Well, that was quite enlightened. When I was growing up hunting in England, they probably would have just taken us to before a firing squad for that. So yeah, things have improved a bit.
Yeah, so my mom, I was like, "Okay." My mom did what she was told, and when I outgrew that horse and then got another horse, I was taking lessons at the barn where of Ann Gribbons, who was on Long Island, and she's now, international level judge and well known in the dressage world, really a pioneer of dressage in the USA. And she took me under her wing. And that second horse, off the track thoroughbred with an old bow tendon, doing local hunter classes, ended up learning everything, and we represented the young riders team 4 years, and through him I became a professional. And I didn't mean to become a professional. I was gonna do something else, but when you're a horse crazy girl and people pay you to ride their horses, you know why get a real job when you can
Indeed.
do that? And yeah, and so that's how I ended up being a dressage professional.
But why dressage? I mean, it sounded like if your first love was to go off into the bush and do silly things with your horse and go hunting and jump and do all the fun stuff, as you put it. Okay, so the dressage had to be a way to get control of your horse. Why did it, why'd you get bitten by the bug?
Yeah, it was at one point my horse was pre-St. George and getting ready to event preliminary level, and I realized I'm kind of a chicken. And we'd go, galloping up to these jumps, and in my mind I was telling my horse, if you want to jump this, I'll stay on you. But if you don't, that's okay with me. And I thought, I'm gonna die because
Yeah.
that's not a way to be an event rider.
No.
So I was a little bit of a chicken, and I really was getting into the complexity of the dressage. I thought it was like amazing. I mean, I remember writing in my diary, like, horses can go sideways, and drawing a little diagram on my first leg yield. I'm like, I had no idea. And what was interesting being at Knoll Farm, like I had my horse in the bushes behind my house, and then I would trailer maybe once a week to Knoll Farm. But I would go in the afternoons after school when all the fancy horses were done being schooled. So I never got, like, I was never comparing. I would just go do what I was told. We'd learn our stuff and I'd go home and practice. And I didn't know that that shouldn't work. It shouldn't work that a kid who doesn't know dressage on a horse that doesn't know dressage should be alone training in the bushes. But we just kept going. Because I didn't go there and compare myself to all the fancy horses that Anne had because I never saw them. We just kept going up the levels, and yeah, then I was just hooked. I love the precision. I think it's amazing that you can teach a horse to do dressage movements because it's like teaching an alien to play piano. I mean, jumps, horses get it. I got to get over the jump. Cows, horses get that. So I thought it was really amazing that I could teach a horse to prance and skip and go sideways, and just because we asked them to. When it works, it's amazing.
She
Feel
was
it.
clearly a very good teacher, Anne, right?
Yes, she's a really good trainer, really good teacher, really supportive of youth in dressage. And yeah, she taught me to ride, she taught me to train, she taught me to teach, and she gave me lots of opportunities to like ride her horses when she went away or teach her students when she went away. And I was so scared, but like she really supported me. And she's, nice. She's very petite. She's fiery and strong, but very petite,
How
and
unusual in the horse
had
world.
to be
Yeah.
clever. Yeah, she had to be clever. She's not a brute force rider.
Yeah.
She had to be light.
Right. But as you know, I mean, so precision can very quickly turn into that tyrannical word that pervades the dressage world and
Yeah.
has done for generations. I was just reading yesterday Max von Weyrother, one of the august dead dudes, of history, who was the teacher of Ziege, who was the teacher of Steinbeck, who sitteth on the right hand of God of German dressage. And, you know, he talks endlessly about correct, 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 correct. He says with a German
You
accent,
must be
delivered with a
correct.
German accent. And there's a tyranny to that word and an innate stress to that word.
Hmm.
And the difficulty, as you know, and I know, is that we have inherited the dressage tradition. In fact, the entire tournament riding tradition of any discipline outside of Western from the military. And with military comes being an arsehole because you've actually supposed to be an arsehole because you're supposed to teach the humans and the horses how to cope with stress under fire. So the idea is you stress them. I was at military school. That's what they did to us. So what surprises me is that given how incredibly toxic the dressage world is, and I know this because I'm in it and I'm a trainer, why was it, do you think, that in that moneyed suburb of New York, somehow you and Anne dodged that bullet? Why did that not end up? Because, when you're an impressionable teenager, and then okay, you didn't start with the shows, but pretty soon you were at the shows.
Hmm.
and you were rubbing shoulders with that culture. And to some degree, that culture must have rubbed off on you a bit.
Hmm.
I mean, one bit, only human. How did you and she manage to navigate to not be sort of subsumed by it?
Yeah. I mean, I think she was much more in that culture, but on the nice end of the scale, right? So there was enough
Right.
things just in the way. I mean, there's a sliding scale of this, right?
Yeah.
So, but the still horses lived in stalls until they came out to work, and they shouldn't use too much energy when they're turned out because we need that for the dressage. So like there's still that, but that's very traditional, She
Well,
was
it's
just
military.
that's the
Yeah.
word. But the language that she used was all educational. It wasn't force and make and that stupid thing, but it was still sys- systematic. I think my personality is I'm so, I don't know, born with this like fierce independence. Like I don't join stuff. So somehow I was enough in love with the horse that I didn't buy into anything that was forced that I saw going on. So I think Anne was on the nicer side of the sort of normal dressage things for sure. But even some of the just lifestyle stuff within dressage. I was part of it that I had horses there. I training horses, but I never liked it. Like I still wanted my horses to be turned out and I wanted to go do fun things with them. And as far as the precision for it was really clear that there is riding and training and there's competing and
Mm.
those are separate. And there's a certain additional skill that you need when you compete, which is the art of making things look like they're working even when they're not, right? So in the moment
Mm.
of the test, you have to kind of keep it together and put a little more leg on and hold them a little bit there and kind of, use that skill. It's a skill and it's not a bad skill, but it needs to be used consciously. So the whole idea of classical versus competitive you know, and I don't even, who knows what classical means. So maybe I won't use that, but there's training, which is you ride today so tomorrow's better, right? You
Mm.
ride today so tomorrow's better. And in competition, you ride so right now looks as good as possible and is good as possible. But if it's not good, make it look good. And I think a lot of times people look at dressage and they think competitive dressage, and then they're learning the skill of make it look like it's happening even if it's not. And then that's what's taught to train. But
Yeah.
if you use that for training, you're
Yeah.
missing the chance to take something apart, deconstruct, educate so that then tomorrow it comes out.
And there's a
That-
key, I think you hit it on the nail there. The going into an arena, arenas are where one focuses attention, right? And things like gladiatorial combat happen, with blood upon the sand or people being eaten by lions or doing a dressage test. So there is an innate pressure and stress simply to the environment of the arena itself. And the the footing of the arena in sand was also partly to drain blood originally, not just it's still there for the bullring. I live in southern Spain, and that's what an arena is. It's there to give grip and to drain blood. So if one understands that, one always knows that when one enters an arena, even in a training context, there's going to be an innate sort of a pressure which comes simply from the spirit of the place. The Romans had a great way of understanding this. I don't know, you're probably aware of this, that the Gaulish Celtic goddess, the French Celtic goddess, Epona, who's sometimes represented as a horse and sometimes represented as a female goddess with a horse and of fertility and plenty as well, was one of the only goddesses ever to be adopted by the Roman army. The Roman army often adopted gods from other cultures because they'd adopt anything from other cultures that they thought was. So the cult of Mithras, for example, was a military cult. But Epona, she's about peace. She's not about war. Yet the Roman cavalry adopted her, and you see shrines to her in Roman barracks that have been dug up, all over Europe. there's often a dedication that you see where, which was an inscription above the horse training area, which was a sort of a dedication to Epona herself and the spirit of and spirits of the training ground. So there was an understanding that the training ground had its own spirits, had its own ghost, if you like. And I think we feel that today, but we maybe don't express it like that. And that force can feel benevolent or malevolent, depending upon a whole range of external factors, right? And internal factors. When you were going into the arena to compete, as you say, you're this girl who actually likes to turn your horse out and likes to do naturalistic things with your horse, and you're accepting, okay, now I'm going into the gladiator phase. Talk to us about your competitive career and how you, as that type of personality, cope. Are you, in fact, deep down very competitive and you just hide it quite well? Are
I
you
mean,
fiercely competitive?
there's nothing like the feeling of having a good ride and being rewarded and acknowledged and getting a pretty thing and standing up there and everybody pointing at you going, look what you did. Right. So I mean, that feels good. But the one of the reasons I stopped competing was because I would go do the class and then I'd, pack up and go and I go, oh, wait, I forgot to look at how I did. Right. So I realized that you could be riding one horse who tried his heart out and did everything that you asked and might never score better than another horse who clearly was stressed out and you were wrestling the whole time, but he's a good mover, so he's going to get a better score. And I just found that the results, I mean, I could see within one horse, you do one test and then over time see how that score improves. But I I stopped being interested in how we did. And I thought, this is way too expensive if I don't really care. Like I like the professional opinion, but I could get that a different way. I don't have to go to a show. But I liked the showing as a moment to rise to the occasion. It's like, can I plan on having a best day in this place at this exact time with this horse? Like that's exciting to me. But and I as part of my education, the showing dressage levels was beautiful. Like we go, okay, this year it's first level. Okay, now we're going to work on second and third level stuff and then we'll do this. And like as a student learning to go through that progression on one horse, the first time doing dressage to take the one horse from zero all the way up the levels was pure gold, priceless to my education. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know how a system can work and I know how it progresses and I know how doing this level then changes the stuff underneath and improves the basics and what do you need in order to do the next. So that's why I'm not at all anti-competition. It's just a date on the calendar on a particular piece of dirt. And can you rise to the occasion and train in a way that gets there? Then the tricky part is, can you as a human with an ego
Mm-hmm.
do that and still have boundaries and still have things that you won't do in order to get that, even if you spent a lot of money on it? Can you still do right by the horse? And so that's the competition and the mental emotional part of that as being a human invested in this. Can you still, be right by your horse? And that's a whole other skill set.
Indeed. I mean, I'm sure once you had taken that professional track, there would have been a certain amount of pressure to consistently win or at least place, because you need in those days particularly. Most of the credibility was based upon your
Yeah.
competition record. How did you resist that? And also with that first horse, how far did you go with that horse? And at what
He
point did you encounter limitations beyond which perhaps he could not go?
Yeah, he learned everything except passage,
Interesting.
interestingly. Yeah, and I remember we tried, and then I remember one day when my trainer was riding him, which he rarely did, and he had a great piaffe and a really good canter, and he should passage. But at one point, it was getting a little, you know, hard. And then he broke out into this perfect pace. And Anne and I just stopped and we said, he it's like he's trying. Like he tried so hard. He broke the diagonal rhythm of his gait to try to please us. And we both just looked at it and go, he's not going to do passage. And that was fine. He had done, he had done enough. And so that, like, I remember that moment going, he's really trying to figure out what the heck we want. And we just decided that, it wasn't fair to push him to do that anymore.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and I think like on the professional track, yeah, there's that moment where you're like, okay, it's going. And here comes the part where someone, puts a really expensive fancy horse under you. And so I was seeing that happening around and, oh, how come nobody and does that with me? And then but there was one moment where, I'm reviewing my goals and I realized like I could imagine, oh, it would be so cool to be on the podium at the Olympics. But then I realized, oh, I think that's the goal I think I'm supposed to have because that's the narrow track. What else are you supposed to do? And I realized I was not interested in most of the parts involved in having that happen. I didn't want to pour my heart into horses that other people owned. I was doing a lot of that and starting to get very heartbroken. I'm like, I can't imagine I don't want to be in that situation where I'm just a rider on a sponsor's horse. I really didn't want to take, I didn't have enough money to buy my own horse. I really didn't like the idea of flying horses all over the world. I didn't like how these competition horses were kept. I like being home. And I just like, wait, I don't think I actually have that goal. I think it's just sort of a nice idea, but it wasn't actually a goal that I really wanted to do. So I let go of it. And I realized I really enjoy just working with any horse to help them move better, or the horse and the rider understand each other better and have fun and be healthy. And, I was in that scene and I realized it didn't fit my personality.
How long were you in that scene?
Gosh, from, like from when I was like 16, started really competing. And then I came to Florida in 2003. And that's when I left, I left the training thing and I came to Florida. And that's when I had started dabbling in the natural horsemanship. And I just came to Florida for the winter season for 2 months. And after 6 weeks, I called home and I said, I'm not coming back. I like doing my own thing with my own horses. I am free and I can do all my silly stuff. And yeah, I
Well,
don't
that's
like.
interesting though. Most people go to Florida out of the dressage world to do more sport dressage, right? I mean,
Well, that's what I
winter
did. It
season.
just
Yeah.
I had already started to fiddle around with natural horsemanship with some horses, with a horse of mine. And yeah, then I had it where I went in Florida just happened to be like 7 miles from Pat and Linda Pirelli, which was the program I was learning at the time. And I just all of a sudden I was out of this training facility with all the eyes on me, and I was all by myself, in this barn. I mean, there were other people around, but I didn't know them. And I could kind of do whatever I want. And I was like, yeah, I can just be who I want to be. And I just like that. This is because I was really ready to quit horses, Rupert. Like I was burned out. I was working. I was tired of the attitude. I was tired of riding everybody else's horses, and just I thought I was going to quit horses. So I did the winters, came down to just be in the warmth, and a student had moved down here. So I was like, just work with her and some other people. And then I was like, oh, it's not horses that I wanted to quit. It was the professional dressage trainer lifestyle and circumstance that I wanted to quit. And so
Mhm.
now I was in Florida riding bareback and bridleless as much as I wanted to. And I was a little kid in love with horses. And I'm like, just more of this, please.
How did you afford it though? Because, if you're not coming from a money background and
Mhm.
you're now making your living, as you say, riding other people's horses up the levels,
Yeah.
and then you make a sudden break, you're in Florida, those parts of Florida where, say, the Pirellis live, that's not a cheap area of Florida. That's not a cheap area to live.
No,
So
but
how
I
did you
just,
manage to make that transition?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. But I mean, I was working my butt off in New York and giving a lot of it to the facility.
Mm,
So, I had 3 horses in training here, plus my own horse. And it's amazing how when you get to keep all that money and rent the stall, I was doing all the work myself, but I was in my mid
yeah,
30s. I could do it.
yeah,
And I was just like doing the math. I'm like, this is actually better. Like,
yeah.
I'm making more money riding fewer horses and it's just different kind of work. But it was
And then
it was time to change.
you
So,
started building up at that point a clientele and a
mhm.
practice. How long did it take you to bring that new practice into coherence, into the dressage naturally thing that we know today? And then what is dressage naturally, and how does it differ from what other people
Yeah.
generally would think of?
Yeah. Well, I'd started fiddling around with, partnership-based natural horsemanship-y kind of stuff in the late 90s. And so then 2003, I came here, and then I ended up going and taking a clinic with Linda. And then they were just really
Linda
generous. Like
Tennington Jones, that would be.
Linda Pirelli.
Oh, Linda Pirelli. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Keep
at
getting my
that
Lindas
point, like
mixed up.
no sport people or dressage people for sure were anywhere interested in anything they were doing, but I had seen some results with my horses. So I was curious to learn a little bit more. And they were really excited that a dressage person was interested, so they were very generous and spent a lot of time with them in Florida, and then they invited me to go to Colorado with them. So I like took some horses and went to Colorado with them. And so for a couple years, I kind of just did that. Lived out of my horse trailer and schlepped back and forth from Florida to Colorado and was very happy. And then I ended up buying some property here in Florida. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm not hanging around with the Prellies anymore. Like I need to, work as a trainer. And I had to figure out like how, like I have all this like foundational partnershipy stuff. I have my dressage training. I'm like, how am I going to figure out like when do you do what? So I ended up writing the book Dressage Naturally, and that was started out as a process for myself of like how do I know when to do what? When do these skills come in? When do these skills come in? How do they dovetail? How do they reconcile? Because some of them is so opposite. Like most natural horsemanship then was like so Western, and the horses weren't moving anywhere the way I wanted my horses to move. So yeah, in 2005, 6, I wrote the book and made a video, and it came out in 2007. And so it was during those years that I really sat myself down and go, how does this fit together? And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And so dressage naturally really is for me hopefully the best of both worlds, right? The mental emotional parts that I learned from more partnership-y training and the physical from the dressage. But I think how it's different than most dressage training is it zooms out. It's like dressage is just one little piece of my time with my horses. Like if any particular horse, okay, so 5 days a week I spend 40 half hour to 45 minutes doing dressage, quote unquote. That's a small piece, but it really takes a holistic view. And so my goal for it is that it helps, horses and rider enjoy the process of learning to be in harmony, but you have to have a holistic view of this. And so what I have a training scale that I use, but underneath that is like the principles and the priorities. So much of the humans get like laser focused on techniques.
Mm,
And there's so many different techniques, and yeah, they can all work or not depending, but where things fall apart, I think, is when everything gets really narrow focus and no one's zooming out and looking at the horse's life and the holistic view of where this silly folly of training my horse to prance falls in. Right? So, so there's like some basic principles. So number one, five basic principles if I had to pick the top five. So one, dressage should be for the horse. The basics should be for the horse and feel good to the horse. It's about healthy movement. Principle 2, everything comes from and returns to relaxation. 3, mental, emotional, and physical are all equal doorways to the goal. And 4, precision. You talked about precision. I think precision arrives out of the possibilities that play creates. And then the last, principle 5 is dressage can only be as good as the partnership, the communication, the biomechanics, and riding skills combined. And all of those matter. So no matter what we do, like, those principles need to be upheld. And then layered on that is these 3 priorities. 1, our responsibility to the horse. Number 1 priority. They did not ask for any of this, and their entire life experience is in our hands, and we owe it to them to give them, a decent life at least. Priority 2 is what I call the happy athlete training scale. So there's like prioritization within that, and I can talk about that in a minute. And then priority 3 is our never-ending quest for our own self-awareness and our own personal development, so we can be the best humans that we can be for our horses, because horses make us happy, but they shouldn't have to.
Well, that's a good quote.
I know that was a lot in there. Boom.
Let's talk about your training scale. So some listeners and viewers will know what the training scale is. And people talk about the training scale, but of course, the training scale is simply a set of principles coming largely out of the German school, which is only one of the various schools of dressage. But it happens to be the one that prevails for historical reasons in what we think of as competition dressage. And there's an interesting accident of history that created that, which probably is worth telling that story in a moment. But so what is it? If I remember correctly, it's rhythm, relaxation, contact or connection, impulsion, straightness, and collection. Isn't that right?
More or less? Yeah, something like that. Yep. And there's some little variations.
There's some variations on it. Some people call it a scale and some people call it a pyramid. And one of the things I've always wondered at with that is, well, 2 things. There always seemed to me one crucial word missing from it and one absolutely ignored part of it. And what you said just now, you actually spoke about the missing bit and you spoke about the ignored bit. So the missing bit to me was joy. When you see a horse in nature pull all the fancy moves, when do you see that? You see that when a horse is playing, when a horse is flirting, courtship rituals, and when a horse is fighting. They lower their center of gravity, just like we do. We dance, we fight, we play, we lower our center of gravity and we move in 3 dimensions. As opposed to when we're just walking to the toilet, when we walk in 2 dimensions, or walking over the hill, or whatever. And that's the dressing of the horse, is to be able to move in those 3 dimensions for whatever reason. But if horses are doing this in behaviors of passion and ecstatic emotional states, then surely that ought to be the primary thing through the training scale, because otherwise the horse could only do it in a sort of mechanical echo, but they wouldn't be able to actually do it because they wouldn't be feeling it. So that would be the first thing. And you did just now mention the enjoyment. So my ears pricked up. And then the other one is, of course, the second phase of that training scale that you always see, relaxation. It's the one everybody seems to ignore. When one goes into your average sport barn, you see everything except relaxation. No one's relaxed with 2 legs or 4. The environment is set up so that you can't be, because whether it's a horse boiling over in a stall or whether it's a human terrified and anxious or fierce and ambitious, or the whole environment is artificial or whatever, just the fluorescent lights you're doing it under or whatever, the entire thing is designed to kill relaxation. And the
And
horse is
that's
probably,
why sorry,
go ahead.
that idea of everything comes from and returns to relaxation. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that in between you're supposed to stress your horse out. It just means a well-regulated nervous
Oh,
system.
100%.
And
I
it's like
mean,
these bell curves of like you have start with a calm, cool horse that loves his life, and then you do hard stuff, and then it returns. And it's not just that like training just gets harder and harder and harder and harder.
absolutely. Or you
Right.
can start with a fire-breathing dragon. I mean, you come in on a stallion who's feeling very stallion-y today, but he's
Mm-hmm.
still in his authentic self. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is where I am right now.
Yep.
And one has to be relaxed enough to say, okay, that's cool. Let's be there together.
Mm-hmm.
And it always seems to me that the mark of a really good horse-human partnership is that you can fizz the energy up enormously, but then when you drop the rein, it's over, and
Yep.
you're both like, "Ah, yeah, okay, that was cool, that was fun. Now let's go relax." And there was an innate relaxation through the whole thing, even when
Exactly.
one was at the apex of a physical thing
Right.
together. Right.
Right. And yeah, you take that horse that's a little fizzy when he comes out. It doesn't mean you just sit there and stare at him until he's relaxed. It just means that priority is like at the end of this thing, the goal is that he's like more relaxed than
Yeah.
when you're just trying to feel like that's the
We've
goal.
got
And horses
endorphins,
can
not
be,
cortisol. Yeah.
yeah, and horses can be up. Like relaxed doesn't mean dead.
Exactly. No,
So,
exactly. So it's interesting to me that you've yourself pinpointed those two
mhm.
missing things, because I've often wondered why that isn't more spoken about.
Yeah. I mean, you take think of how you would be sitting if you were bored out of your mind or feeling repressed or scared. Just think of what posture that would be. And then if someone came along and put a strap on to make my head go there and then did something with my shoulders and put my body in the shape of someone who is engaged and athletic.
You just
Instead,
described
just
my
get me
my
excited. Like there's $1 million over there. Ready, get set, go
you
get
just
it.
described my school days.
I described your what?
My school days.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this training scale that I have, the dressage scale can fit inside there somewhere. But for me, the base is happiness,
Mm,
right? Happy, healthy, calm, content, comfortable for the horse and the human, meaning
mm.
like deal with your own stuff before you show up to your horse, right? Because frustrations, anger, whatever garbage that we humans, carry with us. So the first is happiness. And what I like to think about when I'm not with my horse, how's his life? Right?
Hmm.
Is he just standing in a stall? Or is he be like, no, my life's good, So,
Hmm.
and so just happiness, and that's a weird word, but like just not unhappy, like feeling okay. Like, yeah, life is
Yeah.
good. And then from there is harmony. So the next layer up is harmony. So that's the second priority. That's where like self-carriage comes in, that you and your horse together can be in the space, and there's trust, there's attentiveness, there's attunement, there's an emotional connection, right? So when you and your horse, and two individuals that are happy are going to be easier to harmonize together. And if two beings are in harmony with each other, then okay, like I'm good, you're good, we're good together. Now the next priority we can think about is communication. All right. And because if you're in harmony already, that when you enter the space, your horse isn't running away or attacking you. Like now we can talk, right? So now we can think about the quality of the communication, responsiveness, eagerness, understanding, willingness, mental connection. So many dressage problems can be traced to poor quality communication. The horse looks in the good shape, the rider is told good by their instructor, even though they feel like they have to ice their hands after their ride and their legs are cramping up. So to me, what it looks like means zero if the quality of communication between the horse and rider isn't understood, isn't magical, isn't light. So if you're two happy individuals, they get along fine together, and now they understand each other, now we can start thinking about how the horse is moving. We don't care how the horse moves if the horse and rider are hating each other and the horse is trying to run out the arena. Like it's just ridiculous, right? Who cares? But that happens a lot. in dressage,
Mhm.
right? So,
Mhm.
you know, and PS, when I go through these steps, it's even someone coming with very dressage problems. When I work on the quality of the communication and the harmony and the happiness, already the dressage, already the horse is moving better. They're moving differently. They're moving more freely. The riders can let go because they trust. You know, so there's already improvements in the horse's biomechanics, right? So if the horse energized, balanced, rhythmic, aligned, are they physically connected and moving in a healthy way? So that's the fourth priority. And then if you got all that, now, no matter what sport you're in, now you're ready for the sport specific. So that would be the upper level dressage, the fancy stuff, right? That, you know, anything that you're doing sport specific skills, you're becoming more agile, athletic, strong, you're strengthening the muscles of a happy, harmonious, connected, understanding horse that's moving really freely and healthily. You're strengthening those muscles, you know, coordination, power, things like that. And so when to keep that zoomed out view, you can start to see that a lot of dressage problems are not dressage problems. There's something further down on the scale. And so many problems with horses can be solved by just lifestyle changes or just taking little small simple things and just getting the communication between the horse and rider. What did you ask for? Did your horse answer you? Did you give him feedback? Did you tell him yes? Was he feeling successful? Can he anticipate it the next time? Or are you just controlling him and wanting him to be mindless? Some people want their horses to be mindless. I like my horses to think. So that scale I just find so helpful because it incorporates a lot, but it also gives you some decision making ways to decision make in your horse's training. Like, well, this is not working. Well, is there anything below there that I could, improve? And it helps remind to have a holistic view that like how your half pass is way up on that scale. And there's an example I like to give. I mean, you can probably think of a million examples, but dressage clinic in a covered arena, young horse comes in, doesn't want to go in the arena, balks at the door. They get him in. Now he's in. Now he's tense and he's kind of frozen and not going forward. Come on, get your leg, tap him. Pretty soon the instructor's behind him with a lunge whip. Now they're chasing the horse around the arena. This is not dressage. But that was a dressage clinic, so they had to make it look like it was working when it wasn't. And I'm sitting there going, there's an outdoor arena right next door that he warmed up in that he was perfectly fine. So for me, the choice would be stay in the covered arena, but the goal is that he's confident in there, that he trusts you, that you have some harmony. They were ruining harmony. They were chasing him with a whip. That's not very harmonious, right? So stay in the covered arena and let the horse go, oh, I was scared, but actually it's okay. Or if you really want to take advantage of the dressage professional there and have a dressage lesson, go outside because he's fine outside and you can actually do dressage. And I'm watching this going, what the heck? But they all went to the default mode of we must make it look like it's working, even if it's not. And that, what you said, that militaristic background attitude comes in. He must. And I'm thinking, no, he doesn't must.
Well,
This is
and the idea that one is doing this to perform for a judge rather than
right.
for its own sake is so built in. I remember, I forget where we were training a horse in Piaffe, and the we got the horse really gave this beautiful result, and someone said, "Yeah, but that wouldn't get you a 9 in front of a judge." I'm like, "Absolutely, it wouldn't."
Yeah.
Because that's not the point of what we're trying to do here. There
Yeah.
could come a day where that might be a relevant thing to think about, but that's not today. Why, in your mind, are you already there? Why are you not just within the joy of piaffe, which is a joyful thing?
Right.
Horses do it in nature when they express joy. But you could tell that that person that made that comment was actually not coming from a bad place, that it was just what had been drummed into them.
Exactly.
And again, the tyranny of correctness, and then what even is correct. One of the things that, yeah, I've abandoned giving clinics actually. What I will only do now is workshops, where a certain number of people will bring a certain number of horses. We'll kind of have an idea of where they're at and where we quite like, what concepts would we like to introduce, and are there things that maybe we would like to polish. And then I'll involve everybody. And if a horse is that way, I don't have to rush and say there is this hour in which this person and this horse, because that I fell into that trap and it began to stress me. And then I realized I was stressing the horse and the rider as well, because I was projecting my stress. And I was like, hold on, hold on, hold on. And it got to this point. I was giving a clinic in Ireland, and the horse was so tense. And I said, we should just take off his saddle and bridle and let him just walk around in here and let him roll and let him explore. And luckily, the rider saw the sense in that. And I said, don't worry, just let him do that and then put him away and then come back an hour from now, because I guarantee we won't run out of time here. But anything that we do with the horse in this emotional state would be pointless, right? Because we'd just be forcing something. Frankly, it could even be dangerous. Why do that? And then I realized, oh, right, okay, I've been going about this the wrong way. It should be collegial, it should be collaborative, it should be something different when we come together for some sort of learning experience. What so it's very interesting to me what you're saying, but now talk us through, paint us a picture. Let's say you are out giving a clinic, or somebody comes to you and they do come say, okay, I'm a dressage rider, I've got this dressage problem, it's my half pass, it's my piaffe, it's my flying
Mhm.
change, whatever. And you can tell that what they need is happiness and harmony.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
I
what they want is something, what we call in German, sportlicher.
yeah. Yeah.
How are you going to get them to see what you, and then that's A, and then B, what actually would you do for them? As you may know, if you've been following my work, we are also horsey folk here, and we have been training horses for many, many years in the manner of the old classical dressage masters. This is something which is often very confusing for people. We shine a light on that murky, difficult stuff and make it crystal clear. If you'd like to learn to train your horse in the manner of the old masters and really have fun and joy for you and your equine, go to our website, heliosharmony.com, sign up as a premium member, and begin to take the Helios Harmony course, which will take you from zero to the piaffe, where the horse is dancing on the spot, in hand, on the ground. And then from there, you can develop out to anywhere you want to. heliosharmony.com to unlock the secrets of the old masters.
Okay. I love that you brought this up and shared your experience with teaching clinics, because in talking to lots of students and horse owners and professionals, there's a group that isn't interested in this sort of conversation, but there's a whole group of us that is. And there's this thing where the clients don't always feel good about what's happening, but they feel like they have to follow what the professional says. And the professional doesn't like what's happening, but they feel like
They
they
have to
have to
deliver.
meet the expectation of the client.
Yeah.
And so this is so good that you did that, because both of them are feeling something ain't right and no one's saying anything. And
By the way,
like
I had another experience where I did the same thing and the rider never came back. They just thought I was full of shit.
that's
But
okay.
I wouldn't have
No,
been able to do anything.
but see, this
Right.
is okay. And
Yeah.
this is where so many problems that horses have are made. It's a money decision. I don't
Mm,
want to lose that client, or I don't want to.
mm.
So I think we all have to be really brave. And what I tell my professionals is, like, you have to go on record of stating what you're seeing. That's what you're there for, your professional opinion. And so I'll give an example of a clinic I gave, and let me see which one. Okay, I have a couple. Well, This is just a normal student, and she was like, she had trouble getting to the clinic because her horse wouldn't load in the trailer, and then she got there and she wanted to work on her lateral work. And so I would meet them where they are. Like, okay, show me your warm up, show me your shoulder ins. Okay, show me the shoulder in. It was a mess. So like, okay, well, just talk me through, your aids. What are the aids for the shoulder in? And so usually it's like a paragraph. I'm like, okay, I got the paragraph of aids you're using for the shoulder in. And then like, okay, so it was like leg and hand and see. It's like, okay, well, are those aids working just in general? So like, what happens when you just put your leg on and ask the hind end to step under? And so I just show me that, and like nothing, like she's like squeezing with her spurs. So, and then like, okay, well, show me what happens when you move the shoulders in, like nothing. So I was like, okay, all right, well, this makes sense that your shoulder isn't working. Because so like, I was like, let's pick one. Let's just work on, moving the shoulders around. And okay, we got something like that. And I said, how about like let me move the horse's shoulders and you just follow? So I'd move the horse's shoulders and she's twisting around. So I'm like, okay, now try not to twist when I move the shoulders. And then I was like, would you like, and then we got it going. And I was like, would you like to learn how to do that? Like what I just did. So pretty soon she's on the ground. Now, could I have said, we're going to start with groundwork and do the basic yields? And she came for lateral work help. Probably not.
Yeah.
But I followed the logic. I was like, show me. And I always like to do this. I like students to show me what they've got. I rarely go in and just orchestrate a lesson. I'm like, you show me what you are doing and tell me what's not working and tell me what is, and I'll see if I can help. And so I try to find the biggest pieces of disharmony and like, let's clear that up. If it's a trust thing, then it's like, okay, well, what are you worried about? If you don't trust your horse to let go of the reins, what do you think is going to happen? Are they going to run off? Are they going to like not be able to steer, or like what's the thing? And then we work on that. So I do a lot of talking to my students. I ask them questions. I listen to their tone of voice. And through those questions, we usually go, okay, does it make sense that if we do this, it'll help that? Yes. Okay, you want something for that? Great. And now we're together. And if I really butt heads with someone, then, they don't have to stay. They don't, I'm not going to compromise that. But yeah, and I once I did a clinic, and the owner of the facility was a Grand Prix rider. And she's like, at the end of the clinic, she's like, hey, can you help me? I've got this big horse and I need help with the canter pirouettes. He's really he's heavy. So I watched her ride around, and we stopped to talk. And I was standing in front of her, and the horse kept like wanting to inch forward. And so she had like a grip on the reins. And I was like, oh, just drop the reins. Like, we're going to talk for a minute. And she dropped the reins and the horse would walk forward. So pretty soon she'd be gathering up on the reins, holding them. I was like, just standing there. So it was clear the horse couldn't stand still on a loose rein. And so I started talking about the importance of this, and she thought that was really boring and went on and did her thing. And I was like, no, you really need to be able to stop your horse from your seat and drop the reins and have him stay there. And she again thought, no, she needed to half halt and do all this fancy stuff. And finally she wouldn't listen to me. So I was like, just go ride around. And I sat at the back wall and started checking my texts. I'm like, you don't want to listen to me? I'm not gonna let you, but I'm like peeking. And so I'd give her this example of like canter around and then halt and drop the reins and have them stand there. Like, that's your exercise. And she kind of got the idea and was trying to sort of work on it her way. But then it started getting better, right? And she's like, oh. And she slowly started to ride closer to where I was. And she's like, it's starting to get better. I was like, oh, okay. So I put my phone away and went up and engaged and talked to her. And she still wasn't like fully committed. But I said, and she had these two big mastiffs for dogs, two great big dogs, very well trained. And I said, we're talking about the canter pirouette and sitting and all this. And she couldn't figure out how what I was doing was related to sitting in the canter pirouette. And I said, how do you teach your dogs to sit? And she's like, I tell them sit. And I go, okay. And if they don't, she said, well, I lift up on the collar and push down on the rear end. And I go, and then? And then she went, I let go. And I went, oh. And she said, oh, I get it. So then she went back and played with canter to halt and drop the reins. And then I said, okay, now collect the canter and drop the reins, but stay at the canter. And we did that a little bit. And pretty soon she did a canter pirouette with a loop in the reins.
Yeah.
So it's tracing, it's like tracing, but with her, I probably had to bridge it a little bit more, but I thought I made it clear. But I just had to think of it differently and say, I need the communication, I need the trust, I need to educate the horse on the elements, not just keep trying to make it happen when it's not, or
Mm,
or just use controlling aids, because you can't
mm.
really control a horse if that's
Well, especially not in a pirouette. No, because
yeah,
in a pirouette, as you know, yeah, there's a point at which the horse has to carry themselves in it, and
right,
we have to be out of the way. And
right.
if we're
And then
in the way, it'll destroy it. Piaffe is the same, Passage is the same. Yeah, any of these things that have the really fine balance, if we
right,
stop, we have to set it up and get out of the way.
right.
If we try
And if you
to,
drop the reins, it's not going to cure everything, but you'll find out what piece you need. Like, oh, when you drop the reins, what
right,
happens? Do they need more engagement? Do they need to be rounder? Do they need to be a quicker temp? Like, you'll find out stuff, but it's got to come to a place where the horse is carrying themselves, because that's the point, I think.
yes. In your first story, what I found of interest there particularly was, yeah, the school I came into, because I came into dressage through the back door. I never intended to have anything to do with dressage. It was only that when my son became verbal in the saddle in front of me, and I noticed that it was when the horse was in a soft, collected rhythm that this was happening,
Mhm.
that I realized I needed to learn more about soft, collected rhythm. So that's when I went on this journey that ended up with dressage. And I tried going through the sport dressage riding lesson route, and I just saw everyone stuck at shoulder in for 20 years for the very same reasons that you described. I thought, well, I haven't got time for that. So I need to find something more efficient. And that's how I found my way down to the French Portuguese system down in Portugal, in Lisbon, with the Valensas, and realizing that the entire thing could was so much more efficient if you did it on the ground first, if you did it
Mhm.
in hand, if you understood from the ground what was going on, could see it, get the feel, the horse understands, you're both together on the ground, then including the counter work, and then you are in the saddle, you're the sky monkey, as I call it, but you've got a ground monkey who usually knows more than you, who's the one who's doing what's called the assisted in hand work, and then you transfer the ground aids to the rider slowly, slowly, that says, understand. Oh, I see. When the rider does this with his leg, it means the same as when you did that with his stick on the ground. Oh, okay. Yeah, I accept
Mhm.
that. I understand that. There's no stress. And then little by little, the ground monkey kind of comes away and leaves Sky Monkey and Pony together. And if Sky Monkey and Pony run into some difficulty, Ground Monkey can come in again and help. And this is entirely rational. And I realized, oh, when I was on the right, what we think of as dressage is only actually one small niche. There's this thing, doma vaquera, which is what people now call working equitation. That is dressage.
Mhm.
There is this thing called rejoneo, which is the bullfight style, fast combat style, but it's dressage all the way. And then there's this doma classica thing where you formalize it in a rectangular arena and do it in a sort of balletic style. And not every horse likes, some horses like only one of those. They almost all like the working equitation doma vaquera one. And some horses like all three, and some horses like, there's something there for everyone. And this was very clear. And so then we just went and started producing our therapy horses this way. And what we saw was that within, 24 months, 36 months, you could get backyard quarter horses to like intermediate, you know, because you're doing it on the ground with them. And then when you take it to the saddle, they understand. And then I realized, oh, that's what self-carriage is. The horse is able to carry itself. I, the rider, am not carrying the horse. This horse, no matter what mistake I make, and I make so many mistakes, I'm such an imperfect rider. My horse doesn't give a shit because they understand. They probably prefer it if I was a better rider. They're probably
Mhm.
rolling their eyes a bit and going, "Oh, Rupert's sitting off to the right again, and Rupert's collapsed his shoulder again. Oh well." But I still know what it is Rupert wants, so I'm going to do it. He is carrying himself, and of course, I need that when I'm up there with your child
Mhm.
because I cannot give my attention too much to the horse at that point. My attention is all with the kid. So I need to say to the horse, can you please do this lovely rhythm thing? And can you sustain it, please, for as long as me and this child need you to? And the horse, if they understand, can say, yeah. And then I can give my attention to your child. So the difficulty of, because dressage arose out of doing jobs on horseback, right? It arose out of livestock work. It arose out of war. It arose out of hunting. And then it got formalized into the manege, and even the manege, what we call the arena, but the manege comes from the word main, the hand, mano and main in French. It's where you work the horse to the hand, which is the work on the ground, and then taken to having the horse dans les mains, which we call on the bit.
Yeah, to the hand, not from the hand.
Well, in the hand, dans.
Yeah. But there's a difference between just, oh, good, I get to use my hands now.
Exactly. And but this, of course, is so missing because particularly the East Coast American tradition, it came out of the British colonial tradition of riding, which abandoned all dressage in the 18th century and went to forward seat jumping, fox hunting, So we've had to rediscover it. It was the same in the UK. And we discovered it through the German sports system, which weirdly abandoned all the in-hand work somewhere in the early to mid 20th century. But when you read Ziege and Steinbrecht, they're all about the in-hand work. All those guys were doing it. And then somewhere in the military schools around the early 1900s, you pick up those, was it HDV-12, that book from the German cavalry? Suddenly it's not really in there anymore. And the Germans will still train the piaffe and to some degree the passage from the ground, but the rest of it, they don't. And what it means is then I lived in Germany for 8 years and trained and worked there. And I realized, oh my gosh, this country that is supposed to be producing all the top dressage riders mostly produces really shit dressage riders, actually. And there's just a very, very, very few at the top that get money pumped into them that become the representatives. But the vast majority of the people are riding no better than anyone that you'd see in a regional show in Missouri, and are not being taught any better. The trainers are no better, but somewhere in there it got lost. So it's interesting that you found your way also through the natural horsemanship, so which of course is largely ground based. And when you're training, do you get at a certain point most of your clients to understand then, yes, if I start from the ground, it's probably going to be clearer? Or do you still have the vast majority of people with a real emphasis on trying to do the whole thing from the saddle?
It's a mix. I mean, definitely the groundwork is a part of it. But I think I have, like, I really feel like if you, like, I'm not the one to go to if you want to, like, learn all the classical stuff, from the ground all the way up. I really focus, I mean, I can't do it. But what I really feel like I help people with is whatever discipline you're doing to help create this more harmonious relationship where, like, whether you're going to do jumping or reining or anything, like, I can help people, like, see that big picture, get the happiness, the harmonious, the communication, a freely moving horse with a person who can not get, like, so many people get into dressage and then they get frozen by, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? And
correctness.
And before getting into that, just saying, you're asking the horse something. What are you asking? How is the horse answering? Are you giving the horse feedback? Does he know when he's successful? And are you getting to this neutral place where there is this harmony? And then even with the biomechanics, it's like, if your horse is not moving well, like just on a really basic level, like what you would do maybe in a warm-up or something, you've got to change the energy, you got to change the balance, or you've got to, like, say something about the level of relaxation. Like, can you talk to your horse about that? Can you turn those dials and can you play around? And so, like, when I help people, if they're like, oh, my horse is, say they're on the ground and the horse is like, oh, he keeps falling in on his shoulder on this side. I was like, okay, change something. Like, what happens if you lower the energy or raise the energy? What happens if, are you able to talk to your horse to move the shoulder here and there? Like, if your horse is getting wound up, can you tell him to chill out? And then to teach people to play with that and observe. And by the end of the workshop or clinic, they are telling me when their horse is in the best mode. Like, it's less about, here is the perfect shape for this, and now I'm going to show you how to get it. I'm like, feel your horse. What adjectives do you want to use? Like, did it change? Did he understand what you asked him? And that's what I really want to help people with. And then from that, you can take that and go do whatever discipline you want. Follow
Mm.
this path, do Domo Vaquero, do this, get classic, do competitive dressage. Like, do it in arena and do the Prix St. George. Go ahead. Because all you can shape that into what you want at that sport level. So those conversations, all those things that we're thinking of, yeah, they start on the ground. And can you influence them on the ground? And then, when it gets into the more gymnastic movements, yeah, we can do those on the ground too. But I think where my focus really is no matter what you're doing with your horse, what discipline, when a rider comes to me, I'll like, what's working, what's not, show me what you're doing and show me, I'll look at where I see the disharmony is or the confusion or the imbalances. You tell me what you're feeling and let's get to a place where we can resolve those so that then you can go on. And sometimes they come and they check all the boxes. I'm like, yeah, let's work on your counter change as a hand at the half pass. Now we're in the gymnastic sport mode and we can get into the details of that. But no matter what discipline you're doing, no matter what groundwork or classical this or that you're doing, you got to think, what's the happiness level? What's the harmony level? What's the quality of the communication? Okay, now we can get precise and say, okay, a shoulder in is a shoulder in and it's exactly this. But if all the boxes below that are ticked, it becomes easier. So that's
As
really where my focus
right, as
is.
you say, a lot of people are frozen and stuck and scared. And when, as you know this, when your brain is flooded with cortisol, when you are in front of a dressage instructor, your
Yeah.
brain tends to be flooded with cortisol. You can't think and you can't really take in information and learn. And your feel goes away. And you may not have ever been able to cultivate feel because you might have been so controlled and micromanaged. One sees so
Exactly.
many of those dressage rides with a trainer micromanaging every minor angle of the shoulder and thinking, gosh, well, even if that is working, without that voice in the ear, the whole thing would fall apart because there's a lack of understanding, as you say, a lack of communication. Lack of
Yeah.
understanding.
So
When
there's a,
when somebody comes in and they're not aware of these things, like one says free movement or quality movement, it's by no means a given that any of us would necessarily know whether our horse is in that or not. So, what do you do when somebody comes in and they're actually really unaware that they're perhaps in good faith,
yeah.
but they're really unaware. So there is disharmony, but they don't know there's disharmony.
Yeah.
There's unhappiness, but they don't know there's unhappiness. And there's poor quality movement, but they don't know that either. And then, of course, if you bring that to their attention, they're going to feel somewhat crushed. How does one help them in a relatively short space of time to get there, see that, and also not be destroyed by thinking, oh shit, I've been doing it all wrong and now I need to go kill myself? As you know, if you followed any of my work, I'm an autism dad, and we have a whole career before this podcast in helping people with neurodivergence, either who are professionals in the field. Are you a therapist? Are you a caregiver? Are you a parent? Or are you somebody with neurodivergence? When my son Rowan was diagnosed with autism in 2004, I really didn't know what to do. So I reached out for mentorship, and I found it through an amazing adult autistic woman who's very famous, Dr. Temple Grandin. And she told me what to do. And it's been working so amazingly for the last 20 years that not only is my son basically independent, but we've helped countless thousands of others reach the same goal, working in schools, working at home,
working in therapy settings. If you would like to learn this cutting edge neuroscience-backed approach, it's called Movement Method. You can learn it online. You can learn it very, very simply. It's almost laughably simple. The important thing is to begin. Let yourself be mentored as I was by Dr. Grandin and see what results can follow. Go to this website, newtrailslearning.com. Sign up as a gold member. Take the online Movement Method course. It's in 40 countries. Let us know how it goes for you. We really want to know. We really want to help people like me, people like you out there live their best life, to live free, ride free, see what happens.
That part might be out of my scope, but here's what I do. This is actually
Okay.
this is the fun part for me.
Okay.
So I'll try to think of an example. I'll use, there's a student, a very dedicated student with a lovely horse. She'd gone through several horses, but this is lovely horse number 4. But she was, stuck at the like starting second level thing. The shoulder end will be the death of many
Everyone
people.
gets stuck at shoulder end. Yeah.
And she was, very correct positioned. I should use air quotes there. Like, it looked good, lovely horse. She was trying so hard to do all the right things, but like she couldn't get like a working trot and she was frozen. So here's what I do. I go, what adjectives would you like to use for your horse? First I say, what adjectives do you use to describe your horse? Heavy, lean, all the things. And I say, what adjectives would you like to use? And I get them to get those adjectives, and I like them to feel springier or softer or flowier. I'm like, okay, great. Let's put those in the front of the mind. And then I go, okay, well, the best trot is going to be some degree of energy, either higher or lower than what you're doing. There's going to be some balance shift, different than what you are doing. I don't know what needs to change. Maybe the haunches to the left, maybe the haunches to the right. I don't know. Maybe shoulders, maybe the neck lower, I don't know. So we're going to muck around with that. And we're going to make sure at any time that you can just exhale and stop and your horse can stand still on a loose rein. So we begin. And I might pick one of those, but let's say we'll pick balance. So sometimes playing with the energy already, you'll be like, okay, try higher energy, try lower energy. Where does your horse meet more of those adjectives, right? So the same thing with shoulders. So I might say, okay, move the shoulders one way or the other for just a stride or two, and then just go back to neutral. And we'll muck around. And I said, tell me, so I have them tell me, when do you feel a moment where your horse is slightly more any one of those adjectives that they just told me? I still haven't told them what they should be doing. And so then what'll happen is I'll start to see it change. And I see the student, and I'll go, how about there? And then they'll hesitate, and now the horse won't be in that moment. And they go, I think that was better. And I go, oh. So I'm like, you got to tell me in the moment. I said, I want you to tell me yes if you feel like your horse is even infinitesimally, however you say that word, closer to one of the adjectives you were looking for. Just muck around, change something, go to neutral, change it again, go to neutral. And I have to keep it lighthearted and give them permission to dare to say yes when they feel it. And so that's a big thing, because there's this delay, because they go, oh my God, I felt it. Is that it? Was I wrong? Should I say it? I might be wrong. And now the moment's passed. So I'm like, listen, your horse is under you going, how am I doing, Mom? And I said, you need to tell it. So we get them going around, muck around. I'll be like, encourage them. How about now? Like, say yes, say it louder. Yes. Okay. Now we go, and I say, muck around, go to neutral. It feels better. Say yes. And at the same time, reach forward and rub your horse on the neck. You would not believe how breakthrough that can be. The confidence, giving the rider permission to experiment, because precision arrives out of the possibility to play crazy. Like, move stuff around. Let's see what makes it worse. Move stuff around. The permission to dare to say yes out loud, so you have to breathe while reaching forward, extending your fingers and connecting with your horse. There's a lot of cool things that happen with that. And now the horse is going, oh, thank God I did it. Now the horse is getting this like, oh, I did it. Oops, I lost it. Muck around, muck around. Yes. Oh, I got it. Oh, I lost it. So then we just repeat this, and it starts happening more and more frequently. The rider now knows what they need to do because they get to repeat it a million times, not hold it together for one whole session. And pretty soon, now the rider, I was like, now you tell me when he's in the better spot today. And now the student's riding around going, here, yes, here, oops, hang on a second. And I tell them, I have 2 rules. You got to be either searching or enjoying, nothing in between. So either look for it or just sit there enjoying it. And pretty soon the percentage of time searching gets smaller and the percentage of time enjoying gets longer. And I never told them what to do. They picked the adjectives. They mucked around. I just gave them some things to muck around with. They told me when is yes. And Rupert, like 99% of the time, I completely agree that what they did improved things and that was better than it was before. And I have not told them anything. There's no right or wrong. That is so powerful. And there's so many students who are so, again, like frozen in this, like, because I read this technique and they said to do it this way. And is this the right thing? I was like, get the connection between you and your horse going freely. I was like, if you take that and go play in the bushes all by yourself, just doing that, you will be 80% more improved. And I said, then go get an instructor and they'll tell you some more things like, hey, I think a little quicker tempo or a little higher neck or more, more angle here. It's like, that will be like easy to add on because you already have this relationship and communication with the horse. I was like, but I've never had anybody do that and come back and now their horse is choppier and more crooked and more, heavier. It's always better and it's empowered. So that's why, I tell people I'm empowered learning. That sounds like, a nice thing to put on a website, but that's what I mean by it. It's like most clinics, I'm not telling, at the end of the clinic, I go, do you guys realize I never told you what your working trot needed to be? You guys ended up telling me what your horse needed. And it's for the basics, but like so many people are struggling with the basics that it opens the door to then apply more refinement.
Indeed. And in fact, I think one could say that no matter how educated you become, you're always struggling with the basics. There is no time that I'm not.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. One of the things
Absolutely.
that I love about what you just said, there were 2 things too. I mean, I liked it all, but 2 things again stand out. One was you encourage them to use their voice. One of the inheritances of the military is having your voice taken away. So you're either the officer in charge or you're taking orders. So, when I was at military school, which I was, the only acceptable thing to say was yes, Sarge, or yes, sir, if it was a commissioned officer. No more and no less.
No.
If one takes that to horsemanship, so through Pony Club, which was taught by ex-military, it all comes to, you were occasionally allowed, going in at a big fence when I was a kid to give your horse encouragement and also let out some of your anxiety by going, oh, as they go over the fence. But that was about it. But you were allowed to use your voice sometimes negatively. Then I didn't realize how out of the use of the voice I was. And then, of course, I'm faced with an autistic child who does not speak. And the greatest wish I'm having is for voice. And then through the horse side of the education I have to go through with this, I run into Master Luis Valença in Portugal, who shows me that you can train a horse right up through the airs of the ground between 2 vocal tones, basically. Ah, which is, I like that a lot. Please, can I have more of that? And which is, I don't quite want so much of that, please. And he said to me, Rupert, you've got to have about minimum 85% or the horse will give up. So you need this constant. And then I said, well, okay, that makes perfect sense. But what are we going to do when we get back into a situation where we're not allowed to use our voice anymore, i.e. an arena, a show ring or whatever? I said, because I know people are going to ask me that. And he said, oh, well, then there's all sorts of ways you can cheat, Ru. You can just, and so he showed me all sorts of ways to bring it down. So, for example, if I'm going between, say, Piaf and Passage and back again, if I just go make the sound of p, it's inaudible. But the horse, of course, hears it. He will spring into Passage. But it starts with ha, Sarge. And if it's in Piaf and I put the vocal cue on it, once the horse is understanding it, and it's the one I was taught is rhythm, 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 because I don't want a P one, because I want to distinguish it up, right? So that someone is standing, some distance away, he can't hear what's going on. The horse sure can. So as when you're going from Passage down into Piaf, that's notoriously difficult. Going from the Piaf into the Passage is somewhat more straightforward. So in that deceleration, if I'm beginning to say whisper rhythm, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But it's so interesting to have the voice re-empowered. And your point there of having a rider say yes and making it absolutely crystal clear to their own nervous system, to the horse's nervous system and brain, and their endocrine, their emotional system, that this is good, and that blast of dopamine, and that you're talking about being in the seeking mode. You're either searching or you're enjoying. I love that, because in neuroscience, the seeking brain is never the stressed brain.
Right.
When we're hunting, when we're looking, we're somewhere towards play, always. And horses are the same. When there's, what's that? Problem to solve,
Yeah.
When that's taken away, we're almost always in some form of stress, right?
Yeah.
And I don't hear that being understood much in the dressage world. So I love that you did that. And then the physical connection. I have this thing called spider fingers. When I see people are tense, there's two things. I make them sing silly songs. I will go first, usually, like the naughty limerick that we started this with, which I didn't record. But if people want to email me, I will send them the limerick. But I make them come up with all sorts of silly songs about being on the toilet and things. Because it's just, if you're laughing and feeling stupid, it's a bit hard to be tense, right?
Yep.
Anything I can think of. But then what I'll also do is say, if you can do spider fingers on your horse's wither, and imagine that you were just massaging him a little bit as you go along, you can still hold your reins with your thumb on top and caress your horse and make him feel. But you can also teach him to yield to the outside rein that way, actually. Oh, look, and but make it pleasurable.
Yeah.
This concept of joy and pleasure, that it should feel good to your horse, that it should feel happy, it is missing.
I mean, why else are we doing this these days?
Say that again.
I said, why else are we doing this? I mean, this is all human folly, and we're supposed to be doing it for fun. We're not fighting wars anymore. I mean, this is, I tell myself all the time, I'm like, what's it worth to get my horse to fancy prance on my property around when nobody's looking? Like, come on. Like,
it's an exercise in joy. Yeah. And an exercise in joy is inherently worth it for its own sake, provided the horse is sharing in that joy. Absolutely. And you're doing it together. Well, now that you've reached this sort of august position of being the Karen Rohlf, her Royal Highness,
whatever that means,
Karen Rohlf, her Rolfness.
Actually, wait, I wanted just to say before we get onto the important subject of me, I just read somewhere that the UK, they're allowing voice, or they're going to allow voice. And I'm really curious of like which words are they, like when you said like the negatives you're allowed to say, like I'm just so curious of how that's going to be used. But it's really, I mean, it opens up to being able to use at least soothing tones, or it's the lightest of aids. Like, why not? How is that cheating?
It's also the most clearly directive aids, because it's the aid that anyone more or less can use. Because I think if there's anything that defines our species, it's the larynx, right? We are called Homo sapiens sapiens, which means the thinking ape. But that's not a terribly good description, because anything with a brain thinks, and some things have 8 brains, like octopuses or whatever. So, but what most animals vocalize, and some of them vocalize it in a very complex way. But we're the ones who came up with Shakespeare. We're the ones that do rap, you know, storytelling. That's us,
Mhm.
right? So for us to use our voice comes so naturally to us.
Yeah.
Why would we cut away
Yeah.
the most powerful
I
thing that,
think so. It'll be interesting to see how it's used, but it's a move in a really nice direction, I think. So anyway,
good.
fun little tidbit there.
I,
Now
I think the
back
whole
to
thing
me.
is actually moving in a good direction. I think it
Yeah.
has to because
I was gonna say it has to.
yeah, it's, if it doesn't, it'll die. Now that you've reached this position where you have a platform and people listen to what you say, do you are you being brought back into the tournament world now
I
to
don't
help with
care.
these tools? Because I
I
mean,
don't.
you're sitting there in Ocala, which is it's not quite Wellington. Wellington is real belly of the beast, but Ocala's not belly of the beast. There's a lot of pretty serious high dollar, high money, high ambition, sport ridey stuff going on from
Mhm.
thoroughbreds to dressage and jumpers and all points and western and all points in between. Who comes to you?
It's students who love their horses and want to learn what I'm doing. So I do have students that compete. A student just did their horse's first pre St. George. It was a horse that was given to them because it was about to be put down for extreme behavior
Mm,
issues and major, yeah. Anyway, they just competed. So I'm not anti-competition, but I am here to spread the word and help whoever would like to come. I helped a young girl with a Grand Prix jumper who did an amazing job with her horse, who was trained originally by a guy who dug a pit on his property, would get the horses in the pit and then beat them until they figured out how to jump out. And now she can do Grand Prix bridleless. So I help the people who are attracted to my stuff and would like help in this. I don't feel like it. I think at first I felt this crusade of I'm gonna go
mm.
change the industry. I feel as far away from the horse industry. I don't feel like I'm part of the horse industry. Most of the horse industry I don't like, and I think there's this inherent problem in the industry of money and pressure, and I don't know the
Oh,
solution. And
yeah,
I don't even know if there should be a horse industry. Should there really be an industry of breeding $1 million horses and then they have to perform? I don't know. I am with horses because I love horses. I love the horses more than sport, and I love the individual horse in front of me more than horses in general. And yeah, I'm happy for the internet to be able to share this, and I'm happy for occasions like this. I just in my part of my life, it's a weird blend of I really want to get the word out, and I will help who I can help, and whoever would like this help. But I really like peacefulness,
mm,
and I love my horses. I have 7, and I want to, yeah, spend time I think my goal for a long time as a professional was to not live like a professional. I'm like, how come the amateurs get to have all the fun hanging out with their horses
yeah,
while I'm doing professional horse trainer stuff? So I live, people say they want to come see my facility. I'm like, it's my living room. It's just my property and I have my horses on it and that's it. Because
yeah,
I like my
yeah.
horses to live free. And if I have boarders, then they can't live free. And yeah, so I'm trying to spread the message and the philosophy. I have so much online access. I will teach anybody who's interested in this stuff. I'm finding it even a little bit difficult to go, like you said, you stopped doing clinics. Like I find even expos and stuff like that, I find it more and more challenging. I'm like, I still feel like I'm gonna have to go there and show something or prove something or make some result. And yeah, I think I'm really focused on and in the one hand, spreading the word far and wide, and on the other hand, the moments with the horses, I want it to feel real and intimate and not like a show. So
I think that's the word, intimate, isn't it?
yeah. But like
Because
you said,
it's
like I want to be
it
able to make the decisions and be real and not try to like demonstrate something. So it's a funny place, and it's more in my head because I'm sure I can go demonstrate something. But I'm trying to, think just on the personal journey part of things, I've been working really hard to let go of my ego. And then I'm like, well, how do I do that? And then do marketing and then go put on a show for people. Like, I just want to be in the moment and see what happens and help the
you
being
can you can do
inside of
it. You
me.
can do that. You can do that if it's in service. So, for
Mhm.
example, as obviously I go through that because when I stumbled into this thing with autism, that we really did stumble into something that worked. First, my son
Mhm.
became verbal, and then it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again, and then we realized there was a structure to it, and we started to get the neuroscientists to
Yeah.
explain it, and okay, we could replicate this. And then I went through this real shit. If we do that, then A, people will throw mud at you, and that's always uncomfortable. But B, you're going to have to get out there and do it. And then I thought, yeah, but if I don't, I'm a wanker because there are so many parents like me standing
Yeah.
in a living room or a field, lost, not knowing what to do. And if I happen to have stumbled into something that works and I don't put it out there in the public domain for people to either use or not use as they wish, then I'm withholding.
Mhm.
And given that what I'm withholding is a way to alleviate suffering, I don't actually have the right to withhold it, weirdly. And
Yeah.
I think that you are probably a little bit in that position. So if you found a way that addresses this dressing of the horse thing that takes the suffering out, you kind of do have to put it in the public
Well,
domain.
yeah. No, and that's where I have a lot of resources, and one of the online courses that we have, I'm so proud of because it's not just material, but we do weekly calls. So we're in conversation. I think this is what, the world is bombarded with online courses, but it's really the live support. It's the community and the being able to like
Yeah.
talk about what's happening and help people with the thought process and this more holistic view, because it's not just a technique, it's in the context of the whole thing. So I mean, I have a huge community. I've got instructors that help. I have a lot of resources out there, and that makes me really happy. I love being on podcasts. I'm presenting next week with a group that is talking about the historical, perspectives of cruelty in horse training.
I
And
was looking
and
at
I'm
that. Yeah, I
presenting
found
like
that.
the modern ethical. I'm like, this is, to bring this awareness. People have the resources. I think it's just at this moment I'm trying to balance that with my own personal peacefulness, and that's tricky.
Mm.
So that's just, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the tricky
Well, it's
part.
always easier to keep your ego in check when you're not in front of anybody,
Mhm.
which means that you have to go get in front of people in order to learn
Oh
how to keep
yeah,
your
yeah. It
ego
doesn't
in
count
check.
unless you're in the
Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't count to be a prize fighter if you never get in the arena. No, I get that. I have I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have been in public plenty. So it's just, yeah, it's just a kind of a reshaping of, you know how I'm spending my time, how I'm spending my focus, and at the same time, we have a new course for the happy athlete training scale. We've got the sweet spot of healthy biomechanics. We got tons of stuff. And like I said, I love the live conversation part of it, because it's not just the technique, it's the daily, when you're out there doing it, and then okay, it works, and now your horse is doing something different, and how we think through that, and how we support people's their mental state through the process. And yeah, so
You
it's
say we. Is it you and a team at this point? Is it you and a main collaborator? Is it or is it when you use we, are you referring more to your community
mm,
and
yeah,
the exchange of ideas?
yeah, a little bit of all of that. I do have instructors, so I have an instructor in the Netherlands, and then 3 in the US and 1 in Canada. And they do a lot of the coaching calls for the live calls for the Sweet Spot of Healthy Biomechanics course, and they do clinics, and we get together, and so there's continuing education. So they're really helping with the boots on the ground, boots on the ground, hearts on the ground, and and then I'm working with hopefully developing something with. There's a wonderful Hungarian sport rider, and she's being a pioneer in introducing bitless dressage in Hungary, and so we're doing stuff together.
I've been reading about this, yes.
Yeah, she's lovely. So she's been through my courses, and she's just, wonderful. So we're hopefully developing something to bring the happy athlete training scale to more people in a more applicable way instead of just a concept. And so I really feel a desire to spread the concept now that I have the pieces in place where people can learn to just have these conversations and give people a different way of looking at things, and that more holistic view is so important to me. So that's why I'm super happy to be here.
I'm going to ask you to go, obviously, to tell us a bit more about your online resources, because a lot of people are going to go check them out. But before I do, can you tell me about that horse on the wall behind you? So for those who are listening, some of you are watching on YouTube, and you've probably been, but like me, wondering, who's that horse on the wall behind Karen, and why has she got that horse on the wall? There must be a story there. So let's hear that. But for those of you who can't see it, she's riding, I presume it's you, or someone is riding, a very lovely skewbald, what we would call a skewbald, but others would call a brown and white pinto, but warm bloody, who looks very similar to an Art Deco bred Dutch warm blood Oldenburg cross mare that I had, who was jolly interesting. Tell us about this horse. Why is she on your wall?
That is Ovation, and he is a paint. His father was a jumper paint horse, and his mother was a Holsteiner. And he was locally bred, and he was bred just around the corner. And when I bought my property, I didn't have a whole lot of money left over, but he was just enough, and I got him when he was 3. And he's just lovely. He's a goofball. He's my magnificent goofball, is what I tell him, because he's just powerful and sporty, and does everything in the Grand Prix, and he's a complete goofball. Most people, if you see me on Facebook getting licked in the face by a horse, it's him. He regularly, after I tack him up, he'll like grab his favorite traffic cone and try to bring that with him when I go ride. He'll pick up anything from the ground when I ride him. But he is turning 23 this year, and I feel like I'm just figuring him out. Collection did not come easily for him. He's a big, powerful mover, a lot of pushing power. Collection, not so much. So I had to be really clever in teaching him. And I mean, I feel like just this year, we're like, I told him, I'm like, Ovation, because he's a bit of a brute. He's just like, rah, he's a very physical kind of horse. And I was like, dude, you're 23. I'm now just past 60. I was like, we need to enter the Zen master stage of our relationship together. So I had to explain to him what a Zen, a dressage school master. I was like, dude, you're the most educated horse on the property right now. Like, you're the Zen master. And so, so that's now it's like, I feel like we're like in that, the chef's kiss version of dressage, where it's just light and he's really carrying himself and he's powerful. But his favorite thing to do, his reward, is extended trot. He's like, give me the big stuff. So that's why he's on my wall, and I'm riding him in a rope halter. He's in a rope halter right here, so he's like bitless, and
yes,
he's fantastic.
I can't see from the angle because he's beautifully round. When you say you had to get clever to teach him so that he could collect, what did you do?
Well, things like Piaf. So he has a big swingy hind leg. As far as his action, he can really swing under with his hind leg, but not necessarily articulate his joints. So, in doing some groundwork and doing school halt, when I first told him school halt, he'd just lean back, but the hocks wouldn't bend. What are you doing? Like, you have to bend your joints. So he'd be very engaged as far as like his feet were under his body. I won't say engaged, but his hind feet were well under his body, but he wasn't caring. He just like push from those. So I had this puzzle. I'm like asking him to school halt, and he's just sort of leaning back over his legs. I'm like, you're gonna sit down. So not in a good way. So I'd have to like start the school halt, and then I'd teach him to pick up his back foot. I was like, those joints bend. And so we just do a little bit like rock your weight back and like, those joints bend, and teach him to pick it up. And at some point he connected. He went, oh, I can like bend them when my weight's on them. I was like, yes. Same thing. He's got a big, powerful hind end and not that free in the shoulder. So we first would start, trying to like lift the front legs. And I noticed when I picked out his feet, if I picked up his foot, he'd actually drop that shoulder. I'm like, no, stay level. Or, so in doing like working on like Spanish walk kind of stuff, I was like, okay, I need to teach you to like lift, forget the extension, just lift up through the shoulder. And so we just played until he could like, oh, I can do this. And then when he was there, then extend. And now he already knew how to bend his hock. So, but I had to do a lot of fiddling like that on the ground, literally going, your body can move like this. Did you know that? And then taking that into the riding. And, you figured this out because you went and studied with masters who knew this. I kind of had to figure it out myself because I didn't come from that kind of dressage background. But whenever he had injured himself, and it was a front leg injury. And so when we got back to the stage where, they're allowed to move more, and I thought, well, okay, it's a front leg injury, so this is good news. So that means I can collect him. And I thought it'd be smart to keep him collected, not just bomb around. And so we were just allowed to walk. So I spent a lot of time at the walk and being very particular about his balance and halt and then back up and walk forward, just like these little moves until the dynamic of energy through his body was such. And so I could feel him really collecting his walk and not just getting jammed together. And after, doing weeks of that, and then I can start riding, I'm like, holy crap, he's like more collected than before his injury because I took the time to just fiddle and find that dynamic, get the dynamic working and then adding power to it. So he really helped inform me about the power of just seeing the dynamics, seeing how the energy's flowing through the body, and being conscious about what I'm adding power to. Because he'll go forward, anytime. But it's like I needed to like let me organize it and educate his body to what its possibilities could be. And then he was like, oh my God, my hind legs bend. Like, yes. Now you can pee off and you can pirouette. And Spanish walk was very therapeutic for him. Yeah. So he's just a character that I just love. He's so goofy and so powerful and so resilient, and he's pretty.
Can't wait to come meet him.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll be later this year, so
Yeah.
I'd love to drop in and pay
That'd be
homage to him. So listen, I feel that there are points in the conversation we haven't yet had time to touch on. And as we approach the 2-hour mark, what I think maybe we should do is, if you give all the resources now, the online resources, all the plugs, where people can find you, how they can sign up for your online stuff, how they can come and learn live with you and whatever. And then what I'd like to do, with your permission, is I'd like to have a rematch of this conversation. And I'd like to look at the use of dressage for equine well-being. You've just been touching on it, in this, for example, how can the lifting of the shoulder in the Spanish walk be therapeutic? How can the piaffe be therapeutic, particularly as horses age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this isn't something that is talked about much yet within the dressage thing. Again, I've had to, because most of the therapy horses that we use are old donation horses that we have to yoga, right? And
Yeah.
so again, that perspective luckily sort of came with the package. But we all know that the current relationship that the public has with dressage is that it's not there for equine well-being, and that's a little bit like if we were all suddenly, if yoga suddenly became an Olympic sport, and suddenly everyone would be like dislocating their shoulders and displacing their hips, doing the very thing that is supposed to prevent you from doing that. You know what I mean? It's
Oh yeah.
so with your permission, could we have a second conversation this year, another podcast where we can talk about that, because I do think that
I'd
would be
love it.
useful.
Yeah, I'd love it. It's so important, and I just feel like, what you're just saying, like humans can ruin everything by then having to compete. Like I met somebody who's like their hobby, their life passion was, orchids. And then they're talking about all the competitions. I'm like, you get what? There has to be like a best orchid? Like what the hell? Can't we just enjoy
Yeah.
them?
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that'd be
Indeed.
super fun. Yeah, because we have
Okay.
lots of
Okay.
stories of
So give
horses
us the
getting
plugs now.
healthier.
How do people find you? Tell us the names of your courses, your websites, the lot.
Awesome. Well,
Books.
if I'm very Googleable, but if you go to dressagenaturally.net, you will find everything. There's usually a little green bar on the top that gives whatever is currently, the current thing that's happening. But there's also a page called Learn, and that will list all the courses. And it lists all the online offerings I have in kind of reference to that happy athlete training scale of like which part of the scale does it focus on. So there's lots to choose from. If anybody wants to kind of the lowest price offerings are my video classroom, which is just the entire library, and you can go muck around and there's a free trial. But a lot of people get lost and maybe don't want a subscription. But the other one I recommend people go to is called How to Create a Happy Athlete. And it's very concise, and it goes through that happy athlete training scale so that you really get the whole concept. And then I have like key exercises in each section to help build that. And so that's my new favorite introduction to kind of get the nutshell without being overwhelmed. And I just leads you through it. Just go through the modules, and then there's a bunch of recorded Q&As where you can hear me, student questions, and then how I talk through and explain the logic and how I'm answering based on that scale. So that's super fun. And then twice a year, we open our Finding the Sweet Spot of Healthy Biomechanics course, which is 6 months of, you get lifetime access and then 6 months to live weekly calls, which is super cool. And that's going to be opening up later in March. And that's for anybody who's like, all right, I'm in. We will hold your hand. We will walk you through it, and we will talk to you every week to make sure you don't get stuck. So that's it. And when you get to the website, if you look under the contact us page, it's actually, the link is also on the Learn page, but we do free private consults, which means you can get on the phone with one of my instructors and my right-hand person, and you can sit and just have a private conversation and tell her what's going on with you and your horse, and she'll help point you to what she thinks will be the best resource. And we're in touch all the time. So if you need to talk to me, you can. But sometimes it's just, in this internet world, it's so nice just to talk to a human and be able to like explain things. So
Yeah.
we really want to offer, the live support. There's always someone you can talk to. We welcome emails. Yeah, just don't be shy about reaching out. If you have a question or a comment, we're always available.
Super. And the book.
Yeah, on the book, you can get to that from our shop. It's called, Dressage Naturally. And it comes, the book itself comes with 3 hours of video, which is super fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard it, lads. So go over there, check it out, put your money down, and we're going to have Karen back on, and we're going to talk about. I think what we'll do is I have a second podcast called Equine Assisted World, and I think that's where we should have that conversation, because sometimes we're assisting equines are assisting us.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Look out for that one. please, if you're listening and watching. Karen, thank you so much. This has been really educational and fun.
Well, thank you. Yeah, super fun. And hey, will you come on my podcast sometime?
I would love to come on your podcast. Just
Awesome. We'll arrange that then.
shoot me an email or a
Will
text,
do.
and yeah, we'll do that. Okay. Until the next time, my friend.
All right. Thanks.
I shall-
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you did, please help us to make more. Please like, subscribe, tell a friend, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, please go to my website, rupertisaacson.com. And if you'd like to find out about our certification courses with autism, education, horsemanship, everyday shamanism, there's a whole range of cool stuff. Putting a show together like this is not an easy task. If you'd like to support us, please consider going to our Patreon page and showing us some love there. Even the smallest donation, it really helps us to keep the good content coming. So go to rupertisaacson.com and click on the Patreon link. Not to mention our excellent merch. Please go to our shop and check out some of our really cool rock and roll themed merch, t-shirts, hoodies, all that sort of thing. rupertisaacson.com. It's all there. I can't wait for our next guest and also to meet you there. In the meantime, remember, live free, ride free.